what I'm going to do. Are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay. Hodl, hodl, hodl. Save, save, save. Build a. Sound money. Sound money. All right. Are we live?
We are live, I
that
believe.
silly thing again.
Let me check. We should be live. Just checking all the feeds, all systems. Go. Live stream
I can
engine
always do it again.
is on.
Hodl, hodl, hodl.
Let's see.
Save, save, save.
Yeah.
Build a. Sound money. Sound money.
We're live.
All right, we are live. Guys, we got a really special guest today, and it should be a lot of fun. And the question is very simple. Is Bitcoin kosher? And we've got the Bitcoin Rabbi here, he's done some cool stuff. He's very creative and imaginative. He's written some children's books and has a website, and he's a rabbi, and he teaches people about Bitcoin, as he also goes through the Torah. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and when did you get into Bitcoin, and how did you do this merge? And is it really kosher, or is it something you can't touch? Let us know.
Thanks, Ugly. Thanks, Juan, for having me. Glad to be here. So, I went through a traditional Jewish rabbinical training as a young man, and I've been involved in that for the past decade or so, teaching, giving classes, community projects, involved with rabbinic work. And but I've also just on the side of my own itch and interest have had I'd like to learn about economics. I wasn't really an investor or anything, so I wouldn't say I was a gold bug, but I was interested of the idea of Austrian economics and the gold standard and the history of money. And then I also similarly had I'm like kind of like a tech geek. So I've always kind of been up on tech stuff. And I don't know, somehow Bitcoin flew under my radar for a long enough time that I didn't really discover it till 2017. I think like I had heard of it briefly before, but it just didn't seem, I thought it was like had to do with video games or something. I didn't hear so much about the Silk Road kind of like nefarious side that a lot of people hear about and think about. I just kind of thought that it was, I didn't realize that it was something real, a digital money. I thought it was like had to do with World of Warcraft gold or something like that. So I didn't realize there was an actual financial system that was being built there. So in 2017, my brother, who is in the high tech industry in Israel, he found his way into this industry, and so introduced me to it. And I figured, I try and do with all things in life, try and find connections and meaning. And there are some, interesting overlaps that you can find between Bitcoin and Judaism. So I do some of those things. I'm a teacher, so I like to explain things to little kids. I've got kids myself, so that's how I started writing this book. And I give lectures about Bitcoin and Judaism. I'm working on the book. We've got about 10 different translations out, and that's it. I mean, Bitcoin is super fun for me. I think it's great because I think that it's honest money. It's fair. I mean, that's what Judaism is really about. It's about justice, real equality under the law. And I think Bitcoin is a great equalizer because it doesn't favor anybody over anybody else. So I think in my opinion, I think Bitcoin is definitely kosher. It's a technology, and it's the same thing with all technologies. There's kind of a mistaken view that ultra Orthodox Jewish people, because we have more traditional lifestyles and traditional dress and families and things, people think that we're against technology or something. It couldn't be farther from the truth. And so it's all about embracing technology in a way to use it for good things. Bitcoin can be used for all of the best good financial things that any other kind of money can be used for. So that's why I'm a big fan.
Well, teach us a little bit about that. Teach us about now.
It's fantastic.
I have a Lutheran background, so I'm pretty familiar with the 10 Commandments and thou shalt not steal. Well, so I know we have that in common. And another thing
Same.
that is the idea of just weights and measures. So tell us a little bit about, because we actually get all of that from the Jewish tradition. And tell us a little bit about the kosher. What do you teach as far as having just weights and measures? And why is Bitcoin then kosher?
Yeah, so it's a good point. So I get Bitcoin is rather, excuse me, Judaism is is somewhat different than some other religions, and maybe I would say Christianity or Protestantism, because Bitcoin. I keep saying this wrong. Judaism has a not only like moral code to it, but it actually builds an entire judicial system. And because Judaism was a kingdom and had a whole, like, there's a whole legal system. It's a very all-encompassing. It has the rules of finances, of how contracts are done, of acquisitions and all kinds of things. And so I think that there is a general principle of the basis of which does apply across all religions and all countries and all things, of fairness, of equal justice, that you don't favor one side over another, whether that side is, there's an interesting point that sometimes you have favoritism to the wealthy, through bribery or something like that. But sometimes you have favoritism to the poor also, that you say, well, this person deserves an extra favorable legal position because they're impoverished, and so they should. So Judaism rejects that. I mean, on a personal level, you have a personal obligation to be kind and to take care of people, but from a legal sense, there's equality and and honesty. You have to honor your contracts. So listen, you can use any kind of money if you live in a country. And I mean, I don't not use fiat currency because it's inflationary, and because I think that even though I think the system is unfair and gives unfair advantages, but you can use whatever you have. All money is really just a technology for doing commerce and for storing value and all of the purposes money have. It's just whether it's one technology or another, you can use them. I just think it's the best technology.
I have a question for you. Are you familiar with the history of banking and in Switzerland a little bit? Because
I wouldn't know. I'm not really an expert on it. I don't. I only at a very high level. I wouldn't say that I have, and I feel like there's there's a lot of opinions and a lot of different perspectives on it.
I just wanted to mention, because the study, and I'm limited in my study on this, and I haven't looked at it for years, but if I do recall in all my studies and reading that in one of the reasons that Switzerland developed into the banking community is because the Catholics and the Muslims had a problem with interest, and the Calvinists and the Jews didn't. and so they became the bankers of the world. And I don't know if you're familiar with that at all. Maybe you could enlighten me a little bit.
I don't. The thing about the Jewish community is that for the past 2,000 years, it's been scattered around the world. So there are small populations of Jews in every single which country that you'll find. My family and a big portion of the Jewish were like impoverished farmers in Eastern Europe, like Russia and Poland and Ukraine. That's where my family's from. So we were all the people that, that I know and that I have any connection with, were very far from any of the Western European banking, although I know that there are some Jews that were involved with that, but that's not, so that I wouldn't say that that's something that the average Jewish person has any relationship to or even awareness of. Like, there are some famous names, but it was not there was not so much of a connection. Like I said, my ancestors were villagers in impoverished Ukraine. So
when did they immigrate? When did you?
Throughout in the early 1900s. So I'm I guess fourth generation or something.
You avoided the The
Well,
communist and all that.
well, that's basically, that's why I'm here to live this day. I mean, my ancestors, my great grandfather who came here, he's the one that survived, and all of his family and siblings didn't survive. If they survived the communist revolution, then they didn't survive World War II. So it's one or the other. But that's another reason why, as a Jewish person, I value Bitcoin, because I think that you can't just rely on your government to, if the government controls the money, they basically control you. And it's great when you have a government that you think is fair and is going to treat you well, but you can't guarantee that. Even if you have a good relation for some amount of time, you don't know. So the money, which is really in some ways our essence of, like, it's our whole life, our whole physical life, you have some kind of money. And
it's really the new kind of diamonds, I think, during World War II and during, Nazi Germany, I think a lot of the wealth that they were able to get out was through diamonds. I know that was one way that they.
Right. But even that, I mean, that's one way that some people did, but many people didn't have any option. And that when you don't have an option to move or anything, then then you're stuck. So knowing that your entire life isn't just dependent on the government's currency, I think is an important thing for anybody that has seen the history and has seen the way that, I mean, I even with all the chaos that we're going on in the United States, I still feel very comfortable. This has been the best country for Jews to live in, the entire history of our existence. But you still you have to know that you have to have another option.
Have you been teaching in any way, or kind of, it looks like maybe you're experimenting in some way, because I kind of teach and preach, building your own kind of local Bitcoin economy. And people may not even know about Bitcoin. Like, I have people that, work for us, contract with us, and they really don't know anything about Bitcoin, but they're basically, the only reason that I can employ them is because, I found Bitcoin and I've been able to grow my business because of that. And I was just wondering how you're applying that, because, like say you're building a whole system. So how are you applying that, in your Jewish faith in a practical day-by-day manner?
Well, I give classes lectures mostly to, like, at some synagogues, youth groups, things like that, where I will go through a few. I have some videos of it online called Bitcoin and Judaism, and I teach them about the history of money and, like, the history of the financial system, the history of fiat, the qualities of money, all things that we're, as Bitcoiners, familiar with. And then I also go through different places where money is just described in the Torah, where there's biblical references to money and how it's described and how those kind of correspond to the financial history. And then some, like, modern applications of Jewish things that are more niche, that there are a lot of Jewish practices that you probably wouldn't be so familiar with, but that involve money or financial transactions one way or another. Just for example, little known, but a Jewish wedding is actually the main core of it is a financial transaction between the husband and wife. That is a central part of it. So just small things like that, and I'll kind of fit in, how would this work if we were using Bitcoin instead of using dollars? So there are certain things that I'll teach about, and go through kind of the common myths. Is Bitcoin used for primarily nefarious purposes? What gives Bitcoin its value? What about alternative altcoins? And I'll go through, top 20 myths and things like that so I just, listen, I don't want no one needs to change their whole life to be interested in Bitcoin or to pick up a little bit of Bitcoin. But I let people know that it's my opinion that this could be the next world reserve currency, and that they can position themselves advantageously with it.
One thing I'm impressed
and that it could be a good thing if that happens, if that ends up happening.
One thing that I'm impressed with, and maybe we can share it, is you've actually written a comic book, because, as Rabbi means teacher. And so not only do you teach your congregation, but you also are teaching children about this, and you've actually done an effective way of doing it. You've got a website there, you kind of show what you're doing, but you also have a comic book, and if you're not Jewish, but you have children, it's something that you might want to consider. It's like $10, but it's a bargain, and you can buy them in bulk. So I would highly recommend. I need to order some myself. So, at any rate, it's Bitcoin money, and he starts out with a lemonade stand and tells the story. Did you illustrate that yourself, or did you hire to get that done?
Oh, I definitely did not illustrate that myself. So I'll tell you some of the background. My wife is a graphic designer, and she has designed many books and magazines and things. That is her profession. So I I wrote the story. It's a short story. It's only 1,000 words. It's a 30-page book, and I gave it to her, and then she hired a illustrator. She's a designer, not an illustrator, but she hired the illustrator, and she did the layout, and she designed it. But so she was the creative director of the book. But it really just the whole story came to me like in a flash. Like I wrote it really essentially in one sitting.
Well, you got some top-notch endorsements there. I'll have to get one, and maybe you'll want to. I don't know if an ugly old goat endorsement would help you much, though. But I love these guys that we have on there. Giacomo and Pierre and Max, those are all three great guys. And Michael Golston, I don't really know him. Grandpa, I don't know. Is that your grandpa?
Yeah, that's my father, but he's right. Grandpa. So because one of the things people, it looks like a children's book, and it reads like a children's book. I've got a copy right here. It's a fully illustrated book, but the point is that it's actually a great beginner to guide for an older person also, because lots of times what I think a lot of people when they're explaining Bitcoin, and it's gotten better over the years, but even at the beginning when I was trying to understand Bitcoin, everybody starts out by explaining, there was Satoshi Nakamoto and the blockchain and signatures and, mining and all this stuff. And that's why, and it's going to be worth $10 million sometime. And the person is like, well, I didn't understand. They say, well, I didn't understand any of the first stuff that you said, so I have no idea why it's going to be worth $10 million, because it sounds like a bunch of, techno babble. So I ignore all of that in the book, and I go from a purely economic explanation of what are we looking for when we're looking for money? What are the desirable traits of money? And then what have we been using for money in the past? And then how does Bitcoin fill that role? So that can be understood to anybody of any age, especially an older person that is kind of scared off by the technology.
I think you or Grandpa ought to get online and do a reading of that book. I think that would really fly.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah, I'll be seeing him for Thanksgiving, so maybe we'll get that up.
Well, and the book is so easy to understand that even politicians can understand it, I hear.
Yeah, well, so remember last summer when all this Facebook Libra stuff was going on, and then you had Trump tweeting, I don't like Bitcoin and yada yada, and so I sent a copy to Trump. And then, I got it. They send, whenever you send something to White House, they send you back a letter for the gift to the White House. It's appreciated. Cool. And then they were doing the hearings, and they called in Zuckerberg and the other Libra guy. And I was like, these people, they don't understand a word of what they're talking about. They just do not get what's going on here. And so I made this campaign. I said, we should send them a copy of my book. And so we raised, I thought like, I started it kind of as a joke. I thought like maybe we'd get like a few $100, send a few copies to members, but it was a huge thing. So for a couple of weeks we sent one to almost every single member of Congress. Wow. We sent to the entire US Senate, all 100 senators, and over half of the Congress people. So that was like it's something like 400 books. It really was a big thing. I got some letters back from the Congress people, and we'll see. I have a feeling that their staffers probably nicked the books and, took them home to share with their kids, rather than the 100-year-old Congress people, the senators themselves. But, it's going to be, we just got our first Bitcoiner senator was just elected in Wyoming. So it's inevitable that it's going to happen. It's only a matter of time, because kids that are the reason I go, presuppositions of, living for 60 years and being embedded in the traditional financial market and financial system, that they have to unlearn to get Bitcoin. A little kid today looks at a smartphone and they look at a book and they think it's a touch screen. They know they are native to technology and they're native to digital currency. If you grew up on video games, like I did, and like my kids have, they know what the coins and the rupees and the digital currencies that they're dealing with in their games, that they have some kind of value. Obviously it's different than Bitcoin, but it's not going to be strange to them. If you're dealing with like boomers and older people, they're not going to understand the technology and they're not going to believe it. So it's just a matter of time of building it up. And I mean that in a general sense. Obviously, no offense to ugly. That definitely the wiser of the older generation are able to get on board with it. But I mean, in a more general sense, I think the older folks are they're not going to be able to get it, and the younger generation.
That is that's for some reason, and they still have a hard time keeping up with me. I can't believe that right now. We're busy during elections, and my assistant, I'm so tired.
Sleeping
I can't come in today.
So. He worked real hard past week and a half. But,
all right. Wow, I'm really great that you came on. You really, I'm impressed, and you made a great appearance here. And I just think, don't be shy. I mean, of course, it doesn't seem like you are. And of course, your first priority should be to your congregation and your family. And I think we all respect that. But I think you can teach us all a little bit here too, because
for sure,
Bitcoin, it's not an easy subject, and the people that can make something difficult easy to understand, that's what we need. That's where the future is, and that's hard. I mean, there's a gap too between these high tech people and where the pavement hits a highway, and so. There's very few of them that can really, relate in a way that the rest of us can understand. But I guess, I kind of feel like maybe that's my gap. I always tell these developers and stuff, you know what, and particularly the shitcoiners, if I don't understand it, I'm kind of the gatekeeper. You got to get through me, because if I don't get it, most of the world's not going to get it either. So we kind of have to keep it simple and stupid for most of us. So, and then we build from there. But that seems to be your gift, and you've been blessed because of it, and I'm so glad of that.
Well, thank you. That's very nice. And yeah, I what I try to bring to the Bitcoin community is obviously not all of my studies are in Talmudic and Jewish law and Jewish ethics, which aren't all going to be universal to all people of all religions. But I try and find the things that do connect and that we all can find. And I think the most powerful thing that I try to bring to Bitcoiners is an emphasis on family. That I feel like Bitcoin, a lot of it has been, the perspective has been on like young financial people, tech whizzes. And I think of it more as this is Bitcoin is for families, for young families that are trying to build their little nest egg, have a long time perspective of, saving, putting things away, being frugal. And so that is where I try to emphasize and put a lot of focus on is to, you're even not on mad gains and becoming rich and Lambos and stuff, but, just take care of your family, take care of your community, save a little, be forward thinking, don't just waste the day and waste your time and money on short-term pursuits, but look towards long-term. And that's what Bitcoin puts everything in perspective of long time, even though it's only at 12 years old, but it magically changes everybody's perspective to extremely long-term. So even today, people were asking me like, oh, Bitcoin right now, it looks like it's going to be hitting new all-time highs pretty soon. So when someone asked me like, oh, are you going to take profit or sell some? I'm like, I don't care about that. That's the Bitcoin's for my children. This is not for me to take gains at some amount. That is not at all so that's what I try to express to Bitcoiners to be. That is like one of the best ethos that I think has been adopted by Bitcoiners.
I think
Bitcoin families is the
idea. It changes if you don't have, and again, you have your morality is based on your faith, and very similar. I think it's very similar, because there's all kinds of different, within the Jewish community. There's Orthodox and some that are in name only, and the same with Christianity or any religion really. But the one thing, for example, that I see, that you have in common is something that's in common with, the Puritans, and that's what our nation was based on. There was common ground, way back then in our founding, nation. I mean, there was not a Christian, Jewish division, or there just wasn't, because we all met on this common ground. And what it says, I'm being fair and honest is, I guess my mentor, he called it, when I said, well, what should I put on a gold coin bearing your likeness? He said, well, for integrity, there is no substitute. And, what I see happening is, I mean, I really appreciate what you teach your children, that, there is an economic relationship in marriage. Wow. That's, I've known that, but where's that practice nowadays? It's just not, it's gone. And but Bitcoin kind of brings all these old values and where they came from back, because it gives you a perspective, intergenerational. We don't know who. I mean, it looks like we're going to go into some kind of chaos in the next few, weeks or months, or who knows. But Bitcoin kind of gets us through it. It's not going to affect the daily problems are still going to be there, and that's what we deal with. But it just kind of gives us that security and long-term perspective we didn't have before we had it.
Yeah. You have to look past the 5-minute candles. That's as they say, zoom out.
Well, I hope you're gonna come to unconfiscatable Tone Vay's thing, because I think that you'd be I'd love to see you there. I just think that what you're doing is I take my hat off to you, because to combine your faith and you being a rabbi with Bitcoin, it takes it takes some kahunas, and but it really doesn't, because you don't know what else to do but what you're doing, and that's kind of where I'm at. What else can I do but what I'm doing?
Yeah, listen, I love what I do, and I love the Bitcoin community. I love talking to guys like you. I love the amount of people that I've met, and the friendships and the Twitter banter, and the number of times I've actually have met Bitcoiners in person. It's a great community that we have here, and I think that there's something to say for that the people that are involved are nice overall and friendly people and welcoming, and have a positive. I mean, everyone who's into Bitcoin is in it because not just because they think it's personally beneficial, but because they think it's globally beneficial. And not many hobbies can you say that about. People that are into baseball, do they think that it's a global good, that something about their team winning the World Series is going to be some ultimate good for the world? No, but we Bitcoiners believe that it's a good thing for the world that a fairer, freer economic system be developed and be available.
Yep.
Can you elaborate on that, actually? Because I think it's obvious to me in many ways, and I think it might be obvious to a lot of us that are in Bitcoin, but it seems to me like it's not a case that is made very often, right? Like the orange coin go up is one of the main sort of things that you bait people with in a sense. And it's very effective marketing in that sense. But like there is a bigger picture. There is a sort of deeper kind of moral good to Bitcoin. And I'm curious, if I was to ask you why is Bitcoin good for the world, what would your answer be?
So I think that the people having more freedom and self-sovereignty is generally a better thing. I think that that's what we've seen in Western countries, that when people are freer to live, they make better decisions, they make more prosperous decisions for themselves overall. And I think that in general, the fiat system is a hampering, it's a limitation on free trade, on our ability to save money. That when you have a fiat currency, it is that is inflating, particularly, you are pressured to spend it on unimportant things, to get rid of it, and then you can be all kind of, it can be censored. I mean, the entire censorship of the financial system. There are a number of things that I think that having that with the traditional system, there's the government and the corporations have a lot more control over individuals. And I think that's a bad thing. I think that it's a better thing when individuals have more ability to, because they make better decisions for themselves. It brings me back to an old Milton Friedman quote that he would say that there are different ways that money can be spent. It's either you can spend your own money on yourself, you can spend somebody else's money for yourself, or somebody else's money on you. Whenever you have government involvement, you're spending somebody else's money on you, or they're spending somebody else's. Everyone's hands is in everybody else's pockets. And when you just have your own money, then you're making smarter decisions, and it's fair. It's a much more fair system. So, I mean, I think that could be its own. There are people that say it more eloquently than I do. I think the argument is made in the Bitcoin standard of the harmful effects on society that fiat currency has, and in many other places that go into it more scholarly than I have and can. But that's my general perspective. I think it is a net good in the moral sense for the world, for people to have more control over their own money.
I have a question. I asked you this before the show, and I thought it was an interesting answer, because I know we have a lot of followers here that also follow Ben Shapiro to various degrees. So he's Orthodox Jew, and I don't know if it's exactly the same.
Yeah, we're pretty similar. I'd say we're pretty similar.
Yeah, so I figured that much. So we're kind of curious. Have you been able to reach? It seems like you'd be the right person to teach Ben about Bitcoin, because he seems to be very silent about it. And sound money itself. I mean, and he seems like he could be a wonderful spokesman for what's going on here.
Yeah, I completely agree. I am the correct person to teach Ben Shapiro about Bitcoin. We just need to get his attention. Fortunately, he got so popular so fast before I was able to get a hold of him. But we'll see. If some way or another, I bet it will happen eventually. And we were talking right before we went on that I find it's such a glaring thing that the so-called right-wing commentators seem to pay lip service to more fiscal conservatism and fiscal responsibility and inflation and the gold standard and stuff, and they're all selling gold. But I just find it so interesting that they haven't really caught on with Bitcoin. And I think it's only a matter of time before the dominoes start to fall, and that's all you're going to be hearing about, because at some point they won't be able to avoid it.
It's hard because, the conservatives with what's going on. I mean, like, I'm also like a fan of Mark Levin, and yet, he has kind of justified the bailout. okay, so we're bailing it. We're all socialists
Listen,
now.
I'm justifying all the bailouts at this point. I think we print and spend and give us all, $1 million.
Yeah.
I want, I'm
Give it
fully
to everybody,
on that
right?
side.
Don't
Yeah.
select
That's the
a
thing.
few.
Before I was into Bitcoin, I was a fiscal conservative, and now I'm not a tax, but I'm a print and spend liberal as far as that's concerned. I say, lit or rip. That I'm totally fine with that. Let's prove it out. Listen, if it works,
this one's gonna
then
happen.
listen, if it works, then it works. And if it doesn't work, then there's Bitcoin. So I win either way. So I'm totally fine with that. That's the thing. I think that the conservatives who aren't, the one thing that for sure is never going to work is saying the government should print less and spend less money. That will never work. It can't work because it's built into the system of democracy that you literally, the less you give people for free, the less they vote for you. It absolutely, there's no way for that system to work. So you either have to print and spend or have a hard money. So it's it's going to be one or both. But
we
there's
used
no
to,
such
we were
thing
found,
as
we did, and we used to have, we had our growth with sound money. I mean, the golden age was because after the Civil War, we developed the gold standard. We developed banking. We developed basically, self-liquidating commercial paper based on gold, and that's what created it. So can we? We got off track from time to time. But then, starting the turn of the century, when we passed the income tax, and the Federal Reserve has been off track for almost 4 generations now. So it's going to be interesting to see, how we come out of it. So it's and I won't be around for that battle, but you guys will be. And,
yeah, but the thing is, there's what to be optimistic about now, and that's the thing is, that's another one of the reasons I love Bitcoin is because I'm a natural optimist. And I think that, being a religious person kind of demands you to be optimistic because you believe, that really it's all in God's hands. And at the end of the day, win or lose this president or that president, that's what you have to trust.
And our hope is not in this world, is it? So
yeah, exactly. So but it's nice to see something that looks like there's, you're trying to wonder, how is this all going to work out? And, you can always say, well, I don't know, and I'll trust. And that's what works. But it's nice to see something that you can say, hey, looks like this might actually work. And it kind of is proving itself, as time is going on, it's getting stronger and stronger. And so there is there's a vision for a improvement in that stance. So that's one of the things I like about Bitcoin is the optimism of it.
Well, you're a very young man. I know Juan asked how old you were, and you're what, 30 years old?
The third floor.
Wow. Yeah. So I finished rabbinical school at 21. And that's I've been teaching for basically the past 10 years or 9 years.
Now, as a rabbi, a lot of rabbis, you also have other jobs. In other words, I mean, a lot of these religions, you're a full-time minister,
Yeah. So I'm not a pulpit rabbi. I'm not a leader of I'm like a junior rabbi here. Our rabbi of our community is a senior rabbi, in his 70s. So I'm a teacher. I teach in the Jewish private school in our town.
Okay.
So
I teach teachers. Well, it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a school with 100 students, so it's a full curriculum. So I'm one of the teachers in the school, and I also I do web design. So I do a number of different projects. We dabbled. I used to do photography as well. Like family photography and event photography, mostly for like Jewish events. But I don't have enough time for that anymore.
Well, I think that makes a much stronger congregational structure. I really do, because otherwise, lots of people have the one leader, type of a thing.
Well, that in observant, that's in Orthodox Judaism. It's not like there's one rabbi who is the leader and everyone else is lay. It really, and I'm probably into some congregations of different religions. There's also like this, pretty much in the Orthodox Jewish community, almost every member went to some degree of seminary or religious rabbinical school to some level. And so, and there's a big emphasis on daily study and, constant study. So it's a much more involved congregation just across the board in Orthodox Judaism. So, but that means that one person is kind of like the rabbi of your community, of your town, or of your synagogue, but everybody else is, halftime a rabbi, halftime a lawyer, halftime it's a very common thing for people to be trained as a rabbi, but also trained in something else.
Cool.
All right.
I still have some questions, and we have about 10 minutes to go. What has been the reception from your congregation when you talk about Bitcoin? I'm really curious what kind of reactions you've gotten.
They mostly think it's funny. Like because I'm the tech guy of my community. I'm the guy to fix the computer or to tell you what new phone to get or something like that. So it's just kind of fits into that. Most of people are still not quite getting it. They just, it's still, we're still early until we hit new all-time highs. People are still kind of watching from the sidelines. The younger people a little bit more are interested in it. Some of them are, have become interested and have made some, purchases, and some people have really gotten fully on board. But I would say there's no like animosity towards it. And maybe there would have been 5 or 6 years ago or something, but it's become more mainstream now that Bitcoin, even if it's not something that's fully accepted and fully, not everyone is on board with it. It kind of, they see it as somewhat legitimate. They kind of see it as, it's hard to deny when you've got all of these different corporations, PayPal and Visa and Fidelity and the CBOE and all of these things that are legitimate financial companies that are really embracing Bitcoin. You can't just say it's a fad, it's tulips anymore, even if they're not really on board. They kind of realize that it's something that's actually a legitimate thing. So I get a few that, in short, I get a few that are genuinely interested, and others that kind of think that it's a cute novelty, but not for me, that kind of thing. But no real like antagonism against it.
That's great. That's great to hear. What about the Bitcoin community? What's been the reception to your work from the Bitcoiners?
Well, the book has sold great. I mean, I lose track, but we're close to, I would say, somewhere close to 10,000 copies of Bitcoin Money. Maybe like 8 or so, 8 or 9. It's hard to keep track for the different channels, but it's been a great. And I mean, I've traveled. I've been to a few different conferences. Obviously, most of the things I would have done this year got canceled. Also, it's difficult for me to travel to Bitcoin conferences for 2 reasons, or for a few different reasons. One is most of them are on overlap Saturday, which on Saturdays I'm fully offline. I can't, I've got to be home. I've got to be in synagogue. I can't be at anything. So that, and I've got 5 kids and I've got a full-time job. So I can't travel the world doing Bitcoin for fun. So I do most of it from my phone in between, classes, or while I'm trying to feed the kids dinner or something. But I I think I have had a great relationship with the Bitcoin Twitter community and people, mostly online, but some people that I've met. I've been to New York because I live in upstate New York. So it's a few hour drive to the city, and I've met Bitcoiners there. And I would say it's 99.9% positive. And that's what I've loved about it, is right from the beginning, there have been some just great people that I've really connected with and been able to have like a real camaraderie with.
Well, I think maybe you ought to start a kosher Bitcoin conference with Gentiles invited. I think that might really fly.
That's actually would be in to do it in New York, in Brooklyn or something. That's probably a good idea. We probably could get. When I was, you've met Pierre Richard or spoken with him. He used to live in New York, and he said he lived in like one of the Jewish neighborhoods of New York, and he would say like, I've got all these young guys that they go to rabbinical school for some amount of time, and then they try and either just get a job or they learn some skill or something. He's like, we got to start a coding course and get these guys developing developing on Bitcoin, because there's a lot of smart Jewish people in Brooklyn that need stuff to do. So I think it's a matter of time. I really think time is on our side. Every day Bitcoin is getting a little bit stronger, and that it's going to come fat. It might be slow to start with, but when it comes in a wave, we'll see Jews coming to Bitcoin just like everybody else.
Well,
and even easier than a conference. I mean, a Bitcoin meetup, once a month is relatively easy to organize, and it can be reoccurring enough, but it's not tight enough that people actually can show up. I believe the Bitcoin meetups are one of those kind of like grassroots institutions of this industry that are like underrated, but like are very, very effective, because people get to meet each other and you get to see who you're actually dealing with, who's actually interested in this stuff. You get to meet really interesting people, and then you get to learn from somebody one-to-one instead of seeing kind of like the Twitter stuff or like the news, or right. I mean, that's definitely how I kind of got into it.
Yeah,
So,
the first time I ever met Bitcoiners was at a Bitcoin meetup in New York City, and that it was actually the launch of my book. I brought the very first print copy of my book to show, and I met there. There was probably about 25 Bitcoiners or so, and I still talk to maybe 3 or 4 of those guys that I met then on a week, like regularly on Twitter. We met, we got connected, and we keep in touch. So through all the discussions that happen, we see each other in the comments, and it's cool that you can put a face and you can really when you meet. There's definitely, if people haven't gone out and actually met Bitcoiners firsthand, I highly recommend it.
Well, you surprised me, and I really want to encourage you with your vision. And like I say, I had this idea that you're about, closer to my age than 30 years old. But it's great, man. It's just great that you picked this up, and because that's what we need. And I certainly wanted to encourage you. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to figure out. You're right. These conferences are all over the weekend.
It's tough. We'll figure some out. I did. So I managed to go to some on Sundays, if they're just one thing on Sunday. And that's the thing. It depends. If it's on the East Coast and it's on a Sunday, I can go, or even if it's a Saturday and Sunday, but I can't fly across the country to go and on a thing that's on a Saturday. That's we got to figure that out.
I'm old enough that I remember the blue laws. I grew up in the Midwest, and everything was closed on Sundays. And of course, there's some Christian sects that they believe this. And you know what? Tell us a little bit. Why do we have a Sabbath, and why do we keep it holy? What that all stems from? What? My understanding, that comes from Genesis. And tell us a little bit about that, Rabbi. Just why do we have that day of rest, and what happened there?
Sure. In Genesis, it describes the creation of the world. In 6 days, God created the world, and on the 7th day, he rested from that creation. That's Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And so for the first, several 1,000 years, it was not a big deal to remember that or notice anything about that. But when God led the Israelites out of Egypt, out of slavery with the Exodus, he brought them to Mount Sinai and gave the 10 Commandments, and there says to honor to guard the Sabbath day, so to guard it and make it holy. So in the and various times it says to rest on the Sabbath day. So Jewish interpretation of that is there are a specific number of activities, that anything that's kind of a constructive activity, building something, producing something like that, those are considered the works that we rest from. So like lighting a fire for the purpose of driving or something. There's a number of things. It's it's all gone through in the Talmud and the Jewish codifiers of law but it's only in Judaism, it's only an obligation to the Israelites, meaning it is not something that we feel in general, that's how Judaism works. Judaism, the religion of Judaism is that not everybody needs to be Jewish. It's that a Jewish person has these obligations to keep the Sabbath or eat kosher, but not everybody else has to do that. And frankly, they're just fine. So like, as long as they're going about their life being a good person, not hurting, not stealing, not killing, basic general morality, then we don't, you don't need to be, we're not interested in converting anybody, and we're not interested in trying to convince you to do our practices. So that is why Jewish people, or Orthodox observant Jewish people, rest on Sabbath, don't drive, don't use electricity, don't.
And my understanding too, that was actually taken away, when under the pharaohs, and that was one of the reasons that when you were commanded to work 7 days a week.
Right. I guess that was
yeah.
Right.
And,
it's all related.
That was one of the things that was very contentious and led to the plagues and all of that. So, well, at any rate, I think we need to find out where our roots are. And I do think I kind of disagree with you. I think that the law is still valid, but we certainly all fall short. And of course, my hope is in something that's already been done. And so that's probably our primary differences. So I just want to encourage you, man. You're doing a great job, and I'm impressed, and you've got a good story, and I hope this does a little bit of good for what you're doing. I just think you're an example to the people immediately around you and to others, and that's all we can be. We just as best we can be an example to those around, because that's the best and easiest way to teach. And I would encourage everyone that's listening to, we're going to have the links on there. You can buy the,
of course,
the
it's
book.
all in the YouTube video.
Comments
in the
comic
about
book
section.
is what, $10 or something like that to get one of the comic books. We probably need to get
the bitcoinrabbi.com, and all the links are in the description. But you can find them on Twitter too, the Bitcoin Rabbi.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. This is a lot of fun. I have been a great job with starting up the show. Like I say, you got a beautiful set, and you're getting.
Well, we're trying to get better. That's a little bit
Thanks,
I can do. These guys have kind of take the tools. I don't know how to make any of it work, so they're here making it work, and we're getting a little better at it all the time.
Yeah.
I just kind of do stupid things. Now, I hope it's not. Is it kosher? Can you dance? You can dance a little bit, and. With the ugly old goat, it's not Saturday. It's not work anyway.
That's this one.
Yeah. All have to do it.
Yeah, we'll all do it.
Can you
We'll do it together.
It kind of goes like this. It goes hodl, 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 save, build it. Then we go sound money. And that's what I use to teach, because we hodl, and that's what we do. Is we hodl Bitcoin because it's a great standard and store of value. And then I call it saving, which is I kind of bastardized the word savvy. So what we want to do is, because if we hodl, we can reward ourselves occasionally. So you can upgrade that computer, or take your wife out to dinner, or maybe even get her a new car or something like that, depending upon how much you're able to save. And then the last thing we do is we build it. Now, you might be a developer and be building on Bitcoin. I'm not, so I have ugly old goat. I have but you can be a bricklayer, or you can be a carpenter, or you can be a web designer, as you are. You can still be building. You don't have to be on Bitcoin. You just are on the Bitcoin standards. So that's the way I teach it, that we hodl and we save, which is savvy, and then we build it. And I think it kind of incorporates that morality that you were talking about. And so, and I try and keep it as simple as possible. So that's what this little stupid dance is all about.
All right.
So with that, we'll close it out, guys. Thanks for showing up. And we'll go huddle, huddle. Save. Build a. Sound money. All right, we'll see you guys.
Keep having fun. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks for coming on, man. It's good to meet you.